Now, continuing on with basic troubleshooting and walking through of Open Roads Designer for drainage and utilities. If you run a system and you're getting NA for velocity and flow and the other hydraulic analysis properties, it's because you have a critical error that you need to address. You want to open up your notifications and find the message errors in there. This message comes up frequently if you've forgotten to put in your storm intensity data. That can be simply solved by opening up your storm data and inputting your IDF information into the KDOT project and rerunning the system. After you computed your hydraulic analysis, you'll want to ensure that convergence was achieved. If it hasn't been, it may be due to an adverse slope on a pipe or many other reasons. You'll want to go through your messages and ensure that any red notifications are taken care of and the yellow notifications are either not valid or acceptable. If you still haven't received convergence, you may need to update your base options. That can be done under your Drainage and Utilities ribbon, Analysis, Options, and opening Base Analysis. In most cases, you'll just need to increase the maximum network traversals. Remember, the more traversals that it does, the more time it'll take to compute. However, if you're not receiving convergence, a lot of times this is your best bet to change to 50 or 500 or whatever it takes to converge. You may need to adjust other options, including the flow convergence test, but in most cases the maximum network traversal will gain convergence. Another common error is the time of concentration for a catchment is less than the minimum time of concentration for the model. This can simply be reviewed by checking the catchment. If it has a minimum time of concentration that's less than the minimum for the model, it'll just round it up to the minimum. You can check this by going to Options, Base Analysis, and the minimum time of concentration is 5 minutes. Anything less than that will be adjusted upwards. Anything more than that will be what is designated in the catchment area. Other common error messages you may receive are from cover, slope, and velocity. You'll want to check these against your default design constraints and ensure that they're actually an issue. Cover in particular, you'll want to make sure that you have a reasonable amount of cover and realize that it's going to check against the terrain. And so if a pipe is daylighting, such as coming outside of it with an end section, it may not be applicable. You can see here the active terrain model is none. It's checking against that terrain, and so if there is not one active, it's not checking for that. So make sure that you activate a terrain if you do want to use this feature. The last commonly received error message is there's no gutter leaving this on-grade catch basin. If it is modeled as on-grade and there is no gutter assigned to it, the bypass is lost from the model. On these you can double click and it'll bring you to the inlet in question. Just ensure that that inlet doesn't have any bypass flow that needs to be accounted for. This inlet happens to be at the end of my run and there's no other inlets modeled, and so that is an acceptable error message in this case. Another issue that designers will want to be aware of is when you place a catch basin that's ruled to a terrain, it'll import your longitudinal slope and road cross slope from your terrain. However, in many cases this seems to be wrong, and so you'll want to check the longitudinal slope and road cross slope of those ruled to a terrain and update as proper, and even those that aren't ruled, as they won't have the proper information. You'll need to check using the roadway model or civil analysis tools and update accordingly. Also, the default is for a gutter section to be modeled. If there is no gutter section, you'll need to turn that off by changing to user defined, conventional, and turning off depressed gutter. You can then model with just the longitudinal slope and road cross slope for an inlet that does not have a gutter section. Another common issue for drainage design is you typically need the 3D terrain active in your 2D view for placement, and in a lot of cases it may be confusing on how to access that. For example, this is the file that has the 3D contours that I need to access the terrain. However, it's not showing up in there. I actually had to reference in the 3D model of that reference, and then I can see my contours here. In some cases, the symbology may come in correctly as well. You may just have the border. In those cases, you need to hover over what you can, hit the properties, change override symbology to yes, and you can turn on your contours. You can turn on triangles, and flow arrows in particular are helpful. And these are just some of the ways to assist your design as well.